August was a titan. He said he used to refer to himself as a race man, a man who was committed and dedicated to uplifting the black race and telling our stories. So he made a commitment to write a play for every decade of the 20th century, and he did. And wonderful plays, a very open, giving man, and a great storyteller, a poet, a visionary. I believe he arguably is the most prolific American playwright of the 20th century.
Welcome to St. Louis in Tune with Arnold Stricker and Mark Langston, where we size up current and historic events involving people, places, and things in areas such as the arts, crime, education, employment, faith, finance, food, health, history, housing, humor, justice, and sports. Our weekly podcast originates from and connects the gateway city to our country's current cultural fabric and lives. Ron Himes is the founder and producing director at the St. Louis Black Repertory Company. He is the Henry E. Hampton Jr. Artist in Residence, the PAD Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Working Group at the Performing Arts Department at Washington University. The Black Rep has a national reputation for staging some quality productions from an African-American perspective, and if you have not seen a production, you need to get there. He founded the company back in 1976, produced and directed more than 100 plays at the Black Rep. He, as an actor, has some state and national credits, has received multiple awards, and he's on the line with us to talk about the 45th season. Ron, welcome to St. Louis in Tune.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hope you're having a good day.
We're having a great day, and I hope that you are, too. I'm just really honored you have taken some time to talk to us today, because the Black Rep has a great reputation nationally, and the 45th anniversary, wow, that's a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, we're proud and happy to be here, and glad that we were able to make it through the shutdown and recover and open with a wonderful production of Lynn Nottage's Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Sweat.
Yeah, we're going to get into, I want you to detail some of the season that's coming on, and Sweat has started, and it will continue, through Sunday? Is that right, Ron?
Right, through September 26th, Sunday afternoon.
Now, how did you survive through the pandemic? How did that work for you and the company?
What we did was, the first thing we did, of course, like everybody else, is we absorbed the shock, the body blows as they were, of the shutdown. We were in the midst of an extension week on a show that was doing very well, Spell Number 7 by Ntozake Shange, and it had a very successful run, and so we had held it over for a week. We got the Wednesday evening performance in, I think, and then we got the news that we had to shut down the last 4 performances that were all sold out. And so we held out that we would get our last production in, thinking that this is going to be a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and we ought to be back. And we had a show scheduled to open in May, and we moved it back to June, and then we realized that it wasn't going to happen. So we wound up canceling that production, started trying to plan for season 44, and everything was tentative, if, and we wound up not being able to do any live performances during the 44th season. So we, like a lot of theaters and cultural institutions in the country, reverted to virtual programming. And so all of last year, we managed to continue to crank out virtual programming. We managed somehow to keep most of our staff. We cut hours, but we didn't lay anybody off. And our audiences, because we were virtual, it allowed our audiences to expand. So we had people from all over the country who knew of our work to be able to follow us through the virtual programming that we did through. We did one live performance last October, but we did it outdoors on our parking lot. And so we had some people social distanced and seating on our parking lot, and we actually streamed that performance as well. And then from there, we went on to stream 4 or 5 other productions over the course of the year, including our major gala. So we didn't even wind up actually canceling our gala, but we made it a virtual event, and people supported it as well. So
That's great.
Very, very fortunate.
It seems like that has been a silver lining for many companies, music and theater and art groups, that they have expanded their audience via the web and via broadcasting these things to more people around the country and actually internationally, and that has really benefited a lot of groups, including your own, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah, it really did, and I think that it was really important for us, I think, to a lot of funders in the philanthropic community, that we were able to continue operating. And the fact that it was virtual, we had a much wider reach.
Now, take us back to 1976 when you founded the company, and I guess my question is, what got you interested in theater? Were you interested when you were in high school at Soldan, and what interested you in founding the company while you were a student at WashU?
Actually, I did not do any theater in high school, and the company was actually, the Black Rep was actually incorporated in 76, but prior to that, probably in 74, I want to think, we started a student group on campus, primarily because the theater department at the time was not doing any work by Black writers, and African-American students who were in the department were not getting cast in the plays that the department was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to start our own student group on campus and to put on our own plays. And so that student group, which at the time was called the Phoenix Theater Troupe, evolved to become the Black Rep.
Gotcha. And here we are today, so, 45 years later.
Here we are, 45 years later. A group of students got together to fill a void, to create opportunities for ourselves. And 45 years later, we're here doing the same thing. We continue to fill a void, and we continue to provide opportunities and to showcase African-American talent on the stage.
So 45 years, that's a journey. Just describe along that journey as an actor and a director. What are some of the moments that kind of propelled you forward to improve your craft as an actor and a director?
I think that when you look back at the who were like the first generation Black Rep actors, like Linda Kennedy and J. Samuel Davis, Dramond Crenshaw, Rocky Patterson, Archie Jackson. Some of us had some theater training. A lot of us didn't. And so we really worked really hard to train each other. And we worked really hard to not make the same mistakes twice.
Mm-hmm.
And we found work that spoke to us. And as a result of finding work that spoke to us, it was easier for us to approach the work. It was easier for us to mount the work. And it was easier for us to find an audience
mm-hmm.
that the work spoke to. And so we just continued to operate in that vein, finding work that fit the company of artists that were available or that were involved, but also to find work that spoke to an audience that had not seen the kind of work that we were doing, that were not other theaters in town doing the work that we were doing. And so we just constantly raised the bar for ourselves, constantly tried to improve our production values, constantly tried to work with and collaborate with artists who could help to make us better.
When did you make the shift? And it's not necessarily a shift, but you migrated into directing from acting. I know that you still do both.
Yes. Initially, early on, I started directing out of necessity because there was not, again, with a group of people who decided, hey, let's start it. There was not a, quote, director in the group. And initially, we rotated on projects, people having a shot, and with us having a company, everybody did everything. So if you weren't directing, you were acting. If you weren't acting, you were running lights or hanging lights or doing costumes or working on the set. And I guess I really developed an affinity for directing. I know I worked at it a lot, and we brought in directors to work with us. And I think I learned from watching other people work. I began to go see a lot of theater and work at a lot of other theaters in town. For about 4 years or so, I worked constantly at the old theater project company.
Mm-hmm.
And, they had some really talented, gifted people at that company who influenced me a lot. I met Woody King Jr. early on, and Woody had been a big influence on me. And so I think it's just, again, through trial and error.
That's a good teacher.
Yeah.
If you pay attention to the mistakes you make and correct them.
Exactly. If you're not walking around with more ego than a will to learn. And I think that what our interest was really learning to be the best that we could be. We never wanted people to come see us because we were the black theater company. We wanted people to come see us because we were a good theater company.
Great point. And folks, they're a great company. You need to go check some of the shows out that they've got. Now, you mentioned someone who was like a mentor to you, and maybe there were others along the way, too, and maybe still mentor you.
Yeah.
Who were they, and what kinds of things did they give you that helped you become a better actor and director?
I've had lots of mentors. We started the company as students at the university. So, of course, at the university, even before we started doing the theater company. We had mentors. I had mentors who kept me in school. Kept me focused. Gloria White, Dean Jim McLeod, Robert Johnson, who was a graduate student when I was an undergrad and who was head of the Association of Black Collegians. But then there were also artists. Early on, I was not interested in being a participant, but I was in the audience at a lot of different art. The Black Artist Group, BAG, was in full swing, and so I went to a lot of their performances, music, dance, theater, whatever they were doing. The university was constantly bringing in groups. The Black Student Union would bring in artists, and I would see theater that way. But yeah, I just really was up. Stephen McKinley Henderson and John Cochran were two actors who were working a lot at the Loretta Hilton, and were big influences on me because they were doing it. They were working professionally. They were very supportive. They still are. And so I've been very fortunate to be able to stand on the shoulders of a lot of giants.
You produced and directed more than 100 plays. Are there some that stand out to you that really have spoken to you personally that are very valuable to you, to your soul?
Yeah, of course. Certainly all 10 of the American Century Cycle, the 10 plays written by August Wilson. We've produced all 10 of those plays. The Gospel at Colonus, we've done work we've been charged with trying to celebrate the rich canon of African-American literature for the stage, keeping plays alive like Ceremonies and Dark Old Men, The River Niger, Home by Samuel Williams. But also, we've also developed like 20 now, 20 world premieres.
Wow.
So not only have we had a commitment to continuing to honor playwrights and plays from the past, but we've also had a strong commitment to continue to try to add to the body of work. And I think that we've been fortunate enough to develop relationships with playwrights who have trusted us with their new work. We've been fortunate enough to have directors and designers come in who brought history with them and also helped us to create history in the process. I mentioned Sam Williams. We did his play Home, and then we worked with Sam and did a musical version of Home. So we've done work like that. We worked with Michael Thomas Walker and Kristen Dale to do a world premiere play a few years ago called Canfield Drive, which spoke to the Ferguson, Michael Brown, yes. And so we've done probably, I think Sweat is probably the fourth Lynn Nottage play that we've done. Love her work, love all of her work. So yeah, it's been a wide range of stuff. We've probably done a half a dozen productions of Shakespeare with our own spin on them.
Cool.
And just a wide range of.
So what is it about August Wilson? What was he like personally, and how does that kind of come through in his work? Explain that to the listeners a little bit, because some may not be familiar with his work.
August was a titan. He said he used to refer to himself as a race man, a man who was committed and dedicated to uplifting the black race and telling our stories. So he made a commitment to write a play for every decade of the 20th century, and he did. And wonderful plays, a very open, giving man, and a great storyteller, a poet, a visionary. I believe he arguably is the most prolific American playwright of the 20th century.
And his whole, the Pittsburgh cycle, that century cycle, those 10 plays, I remember we saw Two Trains Running, and we actually interviewed James Williams here in studio about that, and also talked to James when things were going crazy up in Minneapolis. And then you've got the play Jitney.
Jitney, we're closing our season with this year. So we were the third company in the country to complete all 10 plays.
Wow.
And that was the first time we went through the cycle. We sort of did the 10 plays as we could get them, as he wrote them, and as we could get them. After completing the cycle, we started through the cycle a second time. And this second time, which we're still in, we're going through the plays in chronological order. We're all the way back up to Jitney. And after Jitney, we have King Hedley II and the Radio Golf. And then we will have completed the cycle for a second time. But the second time we've gone through it in chronological order. And I think that has really been a journey for us and for our audiences to see how all this takes us through the century.
Do you see a growth in his writing along the way as those progress?
Oh, yeah. I think that each of his plays were stronger. I think that his voice became stronger, his message clearer. But I think the thing more importantly is that audiences began to receive his work more openly. I think initially, some critics had issues with his writing, with his style. But as I said, he was a titan. He didn't let that affect how he approached his work. He didn't let it change how he worked. And he continued to tell stories about blacks in America with his own voice, always.
And spoke from his specific experience in Pittsburgh.
Right. Now, and the cycle is called the American Century Cycle, and 9 of the plays were set in Pittsburgh, and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom was actually set in Chicago.
I want to give folks the number for the box office, 314-534-3807, 314-534-3807, or you can go to theblackRep.org, theblackRep.org, and there is a 50% seating capacity right now, health protocols, wearing masks inside, correct, Ron?
Correct, and you must have proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test within 72 hours of your ticket date.
Okay, really important for that, folks, to remember that. Masking.
And you must bring the proof of vaccination with you. We've had a couple of people who've gotten there and said, I'm back to them. We'll say, we need to see your vaccination card. We need to see proof of your vaccination. You must bring that with you.
Is a copy okay? Like a photo?
Oh, yes, a copy is okay. On your phone is okay. As long as, and because you also have to bring your ID. And as long as your name on your ID matches the copy, the picture, your phone documentation is all the same, then you're good.
Sounds great. We're going to talk about each of the plays that are going to be coming in this season. Right now, remember that Sweat is going on, and it goes through till Sunday, and you can get tickets again at 314-534-3807. I want to talk about, Ron, the education programs that you have, and also the gala that's going to be coming up in November with the Fisk Jubilee singers. And I really want to know how you learned to juggle and what kind of magic tricks you do, okay? Ron, so where did you learn to juggle? And tell me about these magic tricks.
As I mentioned, I've worked with the Theater Project Company for years, and I used to tour in the Muni Student Theater Project Company, which was the company that Theater Project Company sent into the schools and their education program.
Mm-hmm.
And early on, we did a lot of training, some tumbling, some juggling. And so we learned juggling for a show that we were going to do. And we practiced a lot doing rehearsals. We chased balls around the rehearsal hall a lot and managed to be able to be pretty good with 3 balls. I watch people juggling now, the kind of how juggling has exploded in terms of the kinds of things that people are juggling and the numbers of things that people juggle.
Right.
I really don't talk about my juggling much anymore.
I didn't know if you were juggling on the golf course or what, because I know you like to play golf also.
Oh, yeah, and I haven't been able to get much of that in, but every now and then I still get out and get around in, and I do when I can. But no, only juggling I'm doing now is schedules and projects.
Yeah, when you were talking earlier about you were directing or acting and everybody had to do something, I figured that's where you learned the juggling right there. That was the real-life juggling rather than juggling balls or something like that.
Oh, yeah, and juggling the book, because actually my undergraduate degree was in business administration. And a lot of those early years, I did the books as well, and that came in very handy.
Now, you've got 5 shows, correct, in this season?
Yes, we do.
And they will vary from being at Edison Theater or the Hotchner Studio Theater or Coca. And give us a little synopsis of each of the plays that individuals will be having a chance to see.
Next up after Sweat, which closes on Sunday the 26th, is Dontrell, Who Kissed the Sea. And it'll be the next production at the Edison Theater. It will run January 12th through the 30th. And I'll just read you the blurbs. How about that?
That sounds great.
Yeah, when 18-year-old Dontrell Jones decides to voyage into the Atlantic Ocean in search of an ancestor lost during the Middle Passage, his family struggles with the thoughts of losing its prized son to the waters of a mysterious and haunting past. Blending poetry, humor, wordplay, and ritual, this rhythmic journey is a present-day hero's quest to explore the lengths and depths we must go to rewrite history's wrongs.
That's January 12th through the 30th. Okay.
Then we move to the Hotchner Theater, which is the small black box theater.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing, by the way, Dontrell, Who Kissed the Sea is written by Nathan Allen Davis, a wonderful young player. Next up is Fireflies, which is by Donja R. Love. It'll be directed by Andrea Fry. And it's set in Jim Crow South. Tells the story of Olivia, the inspiring speechwriter and force behind her charismatic husband and his freedom movement. When 4 little girls are bombed in a church, the couple's relationship is thrown into jeopardy. As Olivia begins to believe the world ain't no place to raise a colored child. This intimate performance allows viewers to experience the powerful drama from Olivia's female-led perspective. It's a wonderful 2-character play that I think audiences will really love.
And that's February 9th through the 27th.
Correct. February 9th through the 27th at the Hotchner Studio Theater, which is in the same building, the Malincrot building, which is where Edison is located.
Okay.
Then for the first time, we're going to move to the new Burgess Theater at Coca with a production called Behind the Sheet, which is written by Charlie Yvonne Simpson. It will run at the Burgess Theater from March 16th through April the 3rd. In 1840s Alabama, Philomena assists a doctor, her owner, through experimental surgeries on her fellow slave women in search of a treatment for a common post-childbirth complication. This compelling work challenges what history remembers, though the women who experience these involuntary surgeries, and reframes the very origin story of a great medical breakthrough. This production will be made possible in part by the Ensemble Studio Theater and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation for Science and Technology Project. So it's really a wonderful play for Women's History Month, set in Women's History Month, about, it should hopefully deal with issues of women's reproductive health.
Yeah, I was wondering when I read some of that whether it was Henrietta Lacks or not, and I'm glad you clarified that for me.
Yes, no, it is actually Marion Sims who did all of these really horrible surgeries on these women, looking for a cure to fix fistulas in women. And then we will close the season in May 11th through the 29th. We will return to the Edison Theater and close the season with August Wilson's Jitney. Set in the 1970s, August Wilson's first play in his 10 decades of history in Pittsburgh takes place in the midst of urban renewal, which threatens to eliminate the makeshift gypsy cab. The story follows a group of men who make a living driving these cabs as they navigate love as fathers and sons, loss and hope, and ultimately community. This must-see work comes to life with a passion that transcends all races. And again, that is May 11th through the 29th. It is the final show of our 5-play main stage season. Then, as you mentioned, in November, on Saturday, November 13th, for one night only, we will present annual Gala, and we will present the Grammy Award-winning Fisk Jubilee Singers in Concert. And that will be at the 560 Music School building, which is on Trinity there in U City as well.
And you can get information on that, folks, theblackrep.org and annual gala. That's up at the top, and you can get some information on that. That's Saturday, November 13th. And for tickets, individual, or you can still do season tickets, theblackrep.org or 314-534-3807. Ron, have you been able to get into the schools at all? I know that they have their issues with COVID and masks and everything else going on, doing some touring or doing some of the summer performing arts. Have you had the opportunity to do any of that or schedule any?
We are in the process of scheduling. We haven't been in any of the schools. We're actually doing a couple of workshops in a couple of schools right now. We're doing some work over at Sumner High School. We're doing some work over at Sister Thea Bowman, which is a Catholic elementary school in East St. Louis. Mm-hmm. We've had some meetings with the superintendent of St. Louis Public Schools. We've got a meeting coming up with the superintendent of University City Schools. And we are scheduling meetings with superintendents and curriculum coordinators, hoping that really focusing on getting into the school's second semester. I think schools are trying to get a handle on getting kids back in school after being out for a year.
Right.
And we are in the process of planning our programming, working on our programming, and having it ready when the schools are ready to have us come in. But we will also, our school offerings will also be able to stream during the second semester as well, so that schools that are interested in programming but are not having visitors come into their buildings, we would still be able to offer them virtual programming. We've got 2 shows that we're working on for middle school and high school. One is a play by Joseph Henderson called Waiting for Martin. And it's a story about 3 homeless kids who are waiting for Martin Luther King to come to their city and hopefully make their lives better. Another show we're working on is by Lisa Evans, and it is called Singing, Stamping, and Shouting Home. And it's a story about a young girl who is the great-granddaughter of Sojourner Truth. And so she learns about civil rights and prejudice through hearing stories about her great-grandmother and her community. And then we've got a new show that I've talked to the writers. We commissioned a couple to write a show for the elementary grades, K through 4. And it's a work in progress. The title has changed a couple of times, and so I'm not sure what it's called right now. But it will hopefully be ready for second semester.
I really appreciate you doing that latter item, really reaching out into the schools. You have to pass on what you have learned and the joy and love of theater and how theater can really educate and help people come together and talk about tough issues and work through them. I really appreciate you doing that. That's a huge thing.
Yes, from the very beginning, we've always done programming for young audiences, for young people and families, and there are several reasons for that. One, that was the easier thing for us to do in the days when we didn't have a theater. We could always develop work to take into the community and into the schools and into churches, community centers, the libraries. But also, it just was a commitment of mine to be able to expose children to theater at as early an age as possible.
Yes.
I was one who I probably saw my first play when I was a freshman in high school. And I had buddies who probably didn't see their first play until after I started. But sometimes if you're not exposed, you don't know. And we want to make sure that we can expose young people and families to theater and hopefully make it an integral part of their lives.
I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and talking with us about the 45th season, about the things that you've learned, about your philosophy. And Ron, it's good to have you on, and I want you to feel welcome to come on in anytime and let us know what's going on in the theater world for you. And we'd be happy to always promote what the Black Rep's doing here in the St. Louis metropolitan area. Ron Himes, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Maybe we'll get in touch if we can get the director of the Jubilee Singers.
Wow.
And maybe we can get him on to talk about the history of the Fisk Jubilee Singers.
I would love to do that because it's a very interesting history. Yes,
it is. Yes, it is. So, thank you so very much. Have a great weekend. I hope that your listeners will take advantage of you announcing the last 3 performances of Sweat, which are tonight and tomorrow, Friday and Saturday at 8 and Sunday at 3 o'clock. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron. You have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We appreciate you listening to this episode of St. Louis in Tune. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out our website, stlintune.com. That's stlintune.com. St. Louis in Tune is produced in cooperation with KWRH 92.9 FM and Motif Media Group. For St. Louis in Tune, I'm Arnold Stricker.